Are you busy raising a house full of teenagers? Well, never fear, help is on its way. Coming up today on The Mum Show, we're talking about those tricky middle years and teens. Hello and a very warm welcome to The Mum Show. My name's Marina and today I'm joined by Catherine Hill from Care for the Family and Hope Plum from Aleos. And we are going to have a great conversation, particularly looking at raising our teenagers. Now, this is an episode I've been waiting for, okay? I have a nearly 12-year-old. We are on the cusp. Things have started to change. There are signs. There are storms brewing. Catherine, what have you got for us?
Just dive straight in there.
Just go for it, because we're
us
taking
all
the
the
notes.
knowledge.
Yeah, so I have survived the teenage years, and more to the point, so have my 4 children. And lots of stories of ways that we've got it wrong, and I hope a few things that we got right along the way as well.
Are there any kind of overwhelming memories that you've brought with you from those teenage years?
Oh gosh, some ones I would really much rather forget, I think. But there have been some funny moments. So one that sticks out particularly is one of our children is a boundary tester. So from the day he was born, boundaries he thought would be to be tested at all costs, just to check that they were really, really there. And we were going away for the weekend, and he was old enough to be left in the house on his own. But we said there were to be no parties in the house. We were very specific, no parties in the house. So off we went, came back, and we found our answer phone rammed full of complaints from the neighbours. Someone threatening to call the police, all sorts of stuff. So I was so mad with him. I said, what were you thinking? And he said, you said no parties in the house. I had it in the garden, he said.
No.
Which, of course, was much worse.
Oh.
So that's probably the tip of the iceberg. Many, many more. One other one with my daughter, and I really got this one wrong. Now, for whatever reason, I had said that she couldn't have her nose pierced at a particular age. I look back and I think, what was the big deal? But just then, she wasn't that old, and I thought it was something that she should do when she was a little bit older.
Yeah.
So I had said no. Anyway, it was probably a couple of days before Christmas, and we had family and friends in our kitchen. And to get into our house, you come down some steps and you walk past the kitchen window. So we're there, grandparents and all the rest of it. And I see her walking down wearing a bright lime green sweatshirt that she had purchased, and her friend wearing exactly the same one. She marched into the kitchen, massive nose stud. I said, is that real? In front of everybody. And she said, yes. And I said, take it out. And she said, no. And I was completely stuck. And I just got that one so wrong. But you know, the lesson for me, it wasn't really about that stupid bit of metal in her nose. It was more, I minded more about what other people thought about my parenting. And it was like one of those awful occasions when our parenting is like holding a mirror up to our lives. Now, we did sort it all out now after that. But but there were many other moments of, the other, I think, abiding memory is when they've been out and they're meant to be back at a certain time, and you wake up and you creep into their room and you expect to see them there, and there's the empty bed.
Gosh, yeah, that must be awful.
That's horrible as well.
It's such a strange time, isn't it? Because the children that you've got to know, they do go through so many changes that can feel out of character. I remember, I haven't got there yet, but I remember being a teenager, and I remember going through this stage of skipping school. But it was really bizarre because I was quite old and I was conscientious and I loved school. But I just kind of got into this, I don't know, this space where I just didn't want to be there for a couple of weeks. I just needed some time. And I remember going down to the school office because I thought, I've missed a few. I'm just going to tell them I've got a tummy ache. I don't know why I did it. I really have no idea. But I turned up at the school office, rubbing my tummy like this, putting all my best acting into position. And when I was through the office door, I saw my 2 sisters doing exactly the same. And so I was like, looked at them and I was like, what And they're like, getting out of here. I was like, okay. So we just said, oh, we've all got the worst tummy aches. And we managed to skip school. Anyway, me and my younger sister, she kind of dropped the habit because the school were more onto her. But me and my oldest sister, we managed to escape through a hole in the fence in the schoolyard. I mean, I can't believe it now, looking back at it. And I really loved school, so I don't know where this came from. But we escaped. We went down this death trap that was kind of like a slidey bank straight onto a motorway. Skipped over the busy main road and went to the supermarket. And we were like, this is it. We've made it to safety. We're going to just go and drink hot chocolate and have fun. Anyway, went flying through the door. My dad was stood there. And we both looked at him and we like froze. We went, oh, hi, Dad. And he went, you all right, girls? And we went, yeah. He's like, you taking some time out? Yeah. He was like, shall I get you a hot chocolate? Yeah. So we went to the cafe with him, we got a hot chocolate, and at the end of it, he went, right, we ready to get you back to school now then? And took us straight back to school. And it was the last time that we ever skipped school. And it was just such an interesting moment for me. And I think for me, it just taught me so much, like, you couldn't parent me the way you parented me when I was 5. Something had to change, and he got that.
The wisdom in that moment, I think, Marina, if your dad just, you know, dealing with it there and then, not making a huge deal about it, let you have that time out that you obviously needed for whatever reason. I think that kind of being able to think on your toes in that moment is so important. And I think what you were saying, Catherine, about the nose ring, I did what your daughter did. So my mum, it happened twice, and my mum said, no, you're not going to have a nose ring. And I went to university and I was like, oh, what does she know? I'm going to do it now. And Mum and Dad came to visit me at university and she was like, you're not going anywhere with us looking like that, take it out. I took it out and I won't go into too much detail, but, you know, with the piercing, they close up quite quickly. And I think Mum and Dad were down for the weekend, and by the time they went back to Birmingham, it had healed up again. But I just went back the next week and got it redone. Yeah. But I think, what do you do in those situations? Your reaction kind of, and I totally get that, of how does it look to other people? But actually, that's not the most important thing, is it? It's the difference between your parents' reactions is so, and I'm like right in the middle thinking, oh, what would I do? Especially just in the moment, what's happening now? How do I do this properly?
I think one of the most important things would be in the teenage years is choose your battles.
Okay.
I mean, it applies right through parenting, but particularly in the teenage years, what are the things that really matter? Say yes to as much as possible and just no to the things that really, really matter in accordance with your values. So for us, curfew would have been one that really, really mattered.
Yeah.
So, but it's different for every family. And then actually the relationship is the most important thing. And I kind of got that wrong, really. You know, get so wound up over something that they'd done and forget that actually how we parent, which your dad did amazingly in that. He kept that relationship, and that's the key.
Yeah.
Push you, Catherine, on that little that phrase that you just said is one that I know is going to stick with me. Say yes to as much as possible. I think that's amazing, and I would definitely say that goes against how I was raised. I think it was just no, no, no all the time. But maybe I was asking the wrong questions. Maybe we should start there. But could you dive into that a bit more for us?
Yeah, I think, well, if we're always saying no, they'll think that we are always on their backs, and then we don't have anything left for when it's something that really, really does matter. And so I just think the teenage years are a time when they're trying to establish their identity away from us, their parents. Their peer group is all important. They're asking all the big questions of life. Who am I? You know, do I matter? Where do I fit into the world? All those things.
Yeah.
And actually, we want to help them do that. And if we're just on their backs the whole time, then we're not enabling them to fly. So I think, yeah, that was a really helpful motto for me anyway.
Say no for something special.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course we have to say no. We're their parents. We're not, that's the other really key thing. We are not their best friends.
Yeah.
You know, they've got hundreds of best friends.
And they don't want us to be, do they?
No, they don't. They
I really
absolutely
don't think they do. But I mean, there's so much happening in the changes that we have to rework with. I know I was talking to my sister, and her boy is so tall now, and she said, you know, it's like having another adult in the house. There's like they physically change, their brains are changing so much, and I guess if we are empowered in what we know about those changes, we can at least have that as our main focus rather than, you know, the scary things like how other people are perceiving our parenting and things like that. I mean, what is there? What do we know about those changes that take place?
Well, it's a time of massive, massive change, and we can see it physically. We can see them changing, and you know we can see the hormones kicking in. So physically, and that's hard for them. If you remember,
Yeah.
I mean, my teenage years seem so long ago, but it's not great, is it? You know, you're not really confident in your body, and you're not quite sure. For the boys, you know, they're growing tall or voice breaking, whatever else. It's hard for them.
Yeah.
So it's their bodies, but the really important thing is that their brains are developing. And scientists used to think that all the brain development took place when in toddlerhood. And it does. There's lots and lots of brain development that happens then, but that's all to do with balance and movement. And since MRI scanning, scientists have discovered, medics have discovered that actually there's a massive burst of brain activity in puberty, in the teenage years. But instead of being balance and movement, it's to do with this bit at the front, which is called the prefrontal cortex, and it's called the moral policeman. It's the bit that helps you, and this is the funny bit really, and explains a lot. It's the bit that helps you make rational, common sense decisions. It's the bit that enables you to have deferred gratification, so you can put off something because there's something better coming down the line. And this bit is just not developed yet. What is developed is the amygdala, which is the bit where their emotions are. Yeah. So we often say at Care for the Family, if living with a teenager feels like, you know, you've got a smouldering Mount Etna in the house and you're just, but you're not far wrong, you're not far wrong, because they think with their emotions, because this bit isn't yet formed. And that is why they do balmy things. It's why they, you know, go tombstoning. It's why they go riding on their bikes without a helmet. It's why they don't want to wear a seat belt. It's why they send that naked selfie or watch Love Island instead of revising for their exam, or whatever it is that you don't want them to do. And it's just, this bit isn't yet formed. And the really bad news is it sometimes doesn't form until they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
But one mum said this to us, and I love this. She said, when I understood that they are a work in progress, and it's about the brain becoming more sophisticated and quicker and enabled to, you know, develop, she said, I realised not only was it not all my fault, but it wasn't all his fault either.
Yeah.
And so if we just understand that bit about the brain, then we can give them a bit of slack.
Yeah,
and we can understand that they just can't yet do it, but
Yeah.
they will be able to.
Yeah, we talk a lot in the Mum Show about different stages and things that we can do to kind of support that growth. But since it is such a big learning time, you know, how can we use situations in life to really help steer that growth and, you know, increase and encourage that brain development?
Can be scary because I think, particularly as mums, we want to make sure they're okay. And I hated it. I hated it when they were going off travelling or any other thing where I wasn't there and I wasn't able to be in control. But that's my issue. And I think enabling them to take appropriate risks. And I often talk about something I call parenting with elastic. So basically, when they're little, we want to keep them on the end of a bit of string because we know that it will keep them close to us and they'll be safe. But when that string stretches, when they seek independence, it will go taut and eventually it will snap. So instead of string, we use elastic. So gradually we stretch and stretch and stretch. And it begins with really small choices, you know, what they spend their money on, what colour they paint their room, whether they have a nose piercing or not, what colour they have their hair, those kind of things. And then gradually giving them more responsibility as they get older. So when they are in a place to be able to stand on their own 2 feet long term, then, you know, they're prepared for it.
Yeah, they're used to making those decisions and they feel confident with making those decisions, which is it's just so important, isn't it? I know in the summer, my daughter is well, she would have been 11 and a half at the time. And she didn't want to jump off of rocks into the sea. And I'm cool with that. You do not have to jump off really high rocks ever. So that's fine. Mummy's happy. But she met a boy who was a friend of hers, and he thought that this was a really fun game, but he was actually very good at it, and he'd taken lessons in rock jumping. And I just sat there watching the two of them, and he sort of encouraged her, like, so if you do it like this, and if you be very careful and you stop at this very low level rock, and I was just sat back watching the whole process, and in my head, I wanted to jump in and just say, it's okay, darling, you don't need to jump any rocks, you know, get away from her, silly boy. But I was just like, yeah, you can't. You've just got to let this play out. He was respectful and kind and caring, and he wasn't putting any pressure on her. And she was like, well, if you can do it, I can do it. You know, you've got a strong body, I've got a strong body, let's give this a go. And I saw about an hour later her brilliantly jumping off of this kind of really high ledge, this really high rock. And it was the first time she did it, it was terrifying, and just thinking, I can't believe it. And I knew, like, there were enough grown-ups, this was a safe zone. This was a regular known place for jumping off a cliff, you know, in a safe way. It sounds awful. But even still, just having to let that go was absolutely terrifying. But bizarrely, once she'd done it the first few times, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was exhilarating. And watching her so confidently and boldly dive into the water and then go straight underneath and feel so confident. And it is just that juggle as a teenage mum, isn't it? Or, you know, kids in the middle years of feeling exhilarated at what they can do, but terrified at the same time.
But don't you think that that's kind of what we've had to do right from the time we became parents, whether it's like dropping them off at nursery and you hear them wailing through the door, that you know that kind of as soon as you've gone around the corner, they're going to be okay. And then as they get a bit older, you know, there's outside influences that you can't control and things, and you just kind of let them go and trust that they're going to be okay. And I think the difference is with the teenagers is that, like Catherine said, they look bigger, they look stronger, you know, the boys are getting hairier or whatever. And I think you could be fooled into thinking actually you are now old enough to make sensible decisions and blah, blah, blah. Whereas actually knowing that that part of the brain isn't fully developed yet, even though physically it looks like it should be, if we know that it's not, that just, it does take the pressure off, doesn't it?
That's really right. And I think there's two things from Marina's story as well that link in with that. And the first one is that somebody said to me, because I just did the same stuff that I did when they were little, and it didn't seem to be working. And I thought, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. And she said this to me. She said, as a parent of teenagers, you need to move from being the controller, because when we're little, we're in control. We decide, hey, we're going to do this now, we're going to go to the zoo, we're going to eat baked beans for lunch or whatever it is. We're in control, really, of what they're doing. And she said, you need to move from that to being the consultant. And if you think about in a business sense, what the consultants do, they advise, they give the benefit of their wisdom, their experience, but then they step back and they let the client make the decision. And so that's our role. We have to give the benefit of our advice and all the rest of it, and then step back.
Yeah.
And that's the truly scary bit, and allow them sometimes to get things wrong. But I found that incredibly helpful, that change in our role.
Because actually, it's not saying that you're pulling away. It's not saying, like, you can still be there to give cuddles
100%.
and warmth and connection. You can still pour all your attention when they need it and empathise and do all those things that we get used to doing with our smaller children, but it's done in almost a different capacity.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And the other thing from your story was the power of the peer group at this age. So your daughter presumably was wanting to be friends with, maybe even impress her, you know, this new boy and that she, you know, met up with or whatever. And again, as parents, it can be really hard to find that they are putting more emphasis on their friends than they are on us. And they seem to be growing away from us. Don't want to be in our company unless, you know, we've got a paper bag on our head or whatever. But actually, that is all part of the process as well. It's what they're meant to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to a very cool kid called Cyrus. I hang out with Cyrus for a little while. He's 10 and a half, he informs me. He's nearly 11, which is very important. And he just wanted to tell us a little bit about what he thinks of life. So here we are. Here's Cyrus.
I'm Cyrus Xavier and I live with my mum, my brother and my sister. I'm 10, 5 months I'll be 11.
What are the sort of things that stress you out? What makes you mad?
It stresses me out when let's say owner breaks something or steals something. Kane usually blames it on me and tells. But then he finds out it's owner. And inside Dinyo, when we see Dad, he told me just to get in trouble to kind of, yeah. I feel scared when I feel scared for what punishment will happen. At school, if you did something wrong and you miss a break, it's not the same with adults. So if they're at their job and they do something silly, they still get to go and do what they want, but it's not the same with kids. I don't think that's fair at all.
Why do you think it's unfair?
I think it's unfair because we have to be under control, but when you're an adult, you can kind of do what you want. I feel annoyed when I get told what to do. Grown-ups really need to understand to maybe sometimes listen to kids' opinions, because sometimes if they don't have opinions, then they don't, and if parents just tell them what to do all the time, how are they ever going to learn to do it?
Couldn't have said it any better, could
Very
we?
good, very good. That bit about opinions, that's so challenging, isn't it? Particularly if we don't agree with our children.
Yeah.
You know, and but helping them develop that critical mind and being able to talk about what they think, even if it's challenging our values. That's hard.
I love listening to him because it's almost like he's got this built-in hypocrisy radar that's growing, and it's kind of like, how come it's all right for you to make a mistake and you own it and then you get to carry on your life? How come if I make a mistake, you're going to enforce a punishment on me? And you know, all those kind of things. It's like he's just reminding us all the time, I'm my own person, I've got my own mind, I've got my own thoughts.
It's justice, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
that he's really aware of. Like, it's just not fair if I do this, but actually you get away with it. And actually that's an incredible thing for a child to have, isn't it? Like, recognising what's not fair.
I think
in the
it's
world.
really cool as well because he is growing into an adult. What do we say at Care for the Family? You're not raising your children, you're raising adults.
Raising adults, yeah.
And he's growing into an adult, and he's going to be somebody who's going to shape and form part of this world and community, and he's getting ready for that, isn't he? What do I think works and what do I think doesn't work? And I find that really exciting to listen to.
He will go far, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Watch this space.
He will. I'm sure, though, I mean, when I was chatting with Cyrus and I could see his mum smiling at the side, you know, you can hear the potential difficult conversations that will be going on in the background sometimes, because when you're raising a child and they're strong and they've got their opinions coming, and sometimes, you know, especially in the teen years, those opinions they form are not necessarily lining up with our opinions or our beliefs or our desires. I mean, how can we manage that, please, Catherine? Give us some more wisdom on that one.
Well, we've been there as well. I think just giving our children they're not clones of us. We can put all our values into their lives and we can give them the best start that we can. But at the end of the day, what we want is for them to make their own way in life.
Yeah.
And it is really hard if they choose a path that isn't the one that we might have wanted for them. But the most important thing is that we keep in contact and we keep that relationship alive, and that they know that we love them for who they are, not for any other reason, not for what they achieve, not for what they look like, and not for what particular path they've chosen in life. They need to know that we love them anyway, and that is the thing that's going to help them most through the teenage years, that unconditional love.
I mean, I think actually over the decades, that's a teenage cry, isn't it? I want to be heard.
I think that links into something that I've heard other parents that have got teenage children say, is that actually a lot of the time you might be ready as a parent to say, tell me, how was your day? Tell me about this. How are you feeling about this, that and the other? And actually, if they're not ready to talk in that particular moment, that's okay. But actually, when they are ready to talk, like you need to be ready and able to sit and listen to what they have to say in that moment. And actually, that window kind of becomes smaller and smaller. That window when they do want to talk becomes smaller. So you've just got to be ready to hear what they have to say when they want to say it.
That is so right. I mean, I think that's one of the things, Hope, that you've mentioned that is so different in the teenage years, because when they're little, you've got so many opportunities to talk to them, you know, bath time, story time, bedtime, all those lovely moments. But suddenly in the teenage years, it's on their terms. And they will choose the most inconvenient times, in my experience, to want to, usually late at night when you're hanging. But it's so important that we seize them because they're gone before we know it. And I think just trying to create those moments sometimes. So having a little routine, maybe it's, you know, taking them out for breakfast, maybe it's, you know, going to watch a football match with them, whatever it is, creating that space if they want to talk, when they know that they are not, what we're doing is the most important thing. But I think the other thing is teenagers don't like being put on the spot. And so if we take them out, you know, for a coffee, eyeballing them, you know, across the coffee table, they probably won't open up. But, you know, breakfast bar, sitting side by side, or the car is brilliant for teenagers because you haven't got the eye contact. They don't feel threatened. And often I found they would open up. I'd often find out loads also when they were with their friends in the back. They think you're an extension to the steering wheel in the front and forget that you're there. You hear all kinds of stuff. But I think that's a really important one. Just being available, like you said, Hope, to be there for them on their terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same goes, I imagine, with being affectionate as well, because that starts to look different, doesn't it? You can't just pick them up very often and throw them around and have the same levels of cuddles, and you're not going to snuggle under a blanket anymore. I'm just making myself a bit sad now.
Some do. One of ours still wants, he's 6'3", and he is the most affectionate, you know, in terms of physical affection person ever. And that continued throughout the teenage years, but you had to choose your time. And I once gave him a big hug in front of the sports coach outside the school when, you know, they were all on the bus ready to go, and that was a really bad idea. But he still needed that hug, but he needed it at home. So again, it's just choosing the moment and knowing your child.
Gosh, there's so many things to think about, aren't there, in raising teenagers? And I guess it's the same message as we've often said kind of on the Mum Show, is tuning in, isn't it? So staying attuned and just being aware. Don't be too dramatic, don't be too shocked, play it cool, but be absolutely available.
And you know, I think the best thing at Kev Family we say to parents of teenagers is this: don't take all the credit, don't take all the blame, just get them through.
I am borrowing that. Don't take all the credit, don't take all the blame.
Write it on your ceiling.
Yes.
I'm going to write it all over the house. Guys, thank you so much. It's been enlightening. And thank you too for coming and joining us. Don't forget, we have many more episodes on The Mum Show for you to enjoy. So please do check out the website detailed below. And we'll see you soon.